In this video, we're going to go over the main causes of assessments for condo and co-op buildings in New York City. I'm Nick at Hauseit. Visit hauseit.com to learn how to save money if you're buying, selling, or renting real estate in New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley, as well as South Florida. So let's get started. So, what are the main reasons for an assessment for a condo or co-op building in New York City? Before we answer this, let's take a step back and do a quick refresher on the concept of an assessment. Well, effectively, when you own an apartment in New York City, you are responsible for some apportioned share of the total cost of maintaining and operating the building. Typically, your share of responsibility is determined in the case of a condo by the percentage of common interests assigned to your apartment. In the case of a co-op, it is determined by the number of shares assigned to your unit. Regardless of what percentage you are responsible for paying in terms of the building's overall upkeep is reflected in your monthly maintenance for a co-op or your common charges for a condo. Now, of course, from time to time, there are certain expenses which significantly exceed the day-to-day budget of the building. And as a result, whatever you're paying each month simply is not enough to cover the requisite capital improvement project or repair for the building. And this is when assessments come into play. The long and short of it is that whenever something really expensive breaks in your building, or when something big needs to be repaired, you might very well be assessed. So as far as the main things which can cause an assessment, let's go ahead and start with the major category being mechanical items. So mechanicals include things like elevators. Elevators are extremely expensive. Certainly a replacement for an elevator can cost several $100,000, but there are also other fairly large projects that don't necessarily go to the extent of replacing the whole elevator. For example, you may want to renovate the interior of the elevator car. That's very expensive too. There may also be required DOB testing and other upgrades, such as a door lock monitoring system, which are very expensive in order to repair. So basically, your building having an elevator or elevators is going to be a potential source of assessments later down the line. And this is one reason why walk-up buildings tend to have lower common charges and, in the case of a co-op, lower monthly maintenance. Another mechanical that is fairly expensive is the heating system in the building. Now, of course, you have your routine heating inspections and minor repairs, but from time to time, you actually need to replace the entire boiler system. For a large building, this can be very expensive, and even in the case of a small 6 or 7 unit building, replacing the boilers can definitely cost 5 figures. Another costly item in terms of mechanicals is potentially the intercom. If your building is hardwired and the lines between the units going down to the intercom downstairs are not working, it can be very expensive to have to retrace the lines and replace the broken ones. And certainly if you're going to upgrade the entire system, that can be expensive because in addition to the main intercom unit downstairs, you of course have to pay for the smart touch panels in every single apartment. Other mechanical items which could cause an assessment include the riser pipes and just more generally plumbing. Now, of course, from time to time, things can go really wrong, perhaps some sort of unexpected problem, but of course, from time to time, you simply just need to replace riser pipes and other fairly expensive plumbing items in the building. And most of the time, your budget may not necessarily have funds allocated for this. Depending on how your condo or co-op operates, they might not keep a huge reserve, so basically plumbing issues could be another mechanical reason why you'll be assessed. So just to summarize mechanical issues which may cause an assessment, they include things like your elevator, they include things like your building's heating system, perhaps your intercom system, and plumbing. And the other thing that's a mechanical item that may cost a lot of money is your fire sprinkler system. Certainly replacing expensive things like the sprinkler system pump and the associated electrical and plumbing work are quite pricey. So especially if you're in a smaller building which doesn't keep a huge reserve and you have fairly low carrying costs, you may very well be assessed for fire sprinkler suppression system related type of expenses. Now, outside of mechanicals, what other things could potentially cause an assessment? Well, in no particular order, let's start with the roof. Periodically, a roof does need to be replaced in New York City. Usually what that means is you hire a roofing company to basically install a new additional membrane on top of the existing roof. This is rather expensive, and it does have to be done periodically. So this is one potential reason why you may be assessed. Another item that can cause an assessment is facade-related upkeep. Now, as per Local Law 11 in New York City, certain types of buildings do need to be inspected periodically in terms of the facade. And these inspections are costly. And of course, when something is discovered that is in need of repair, whether you need to repoint the facade or you need to restore it in some way or secure something that might be loose, it can tend to be very expensive, particularly for pre-war buildings, which have fancy types of designs and other accessories on the exterior of the building. Another item that can cause an assessment is your sidewalk outside the building. From time to time, the sidewalk and perhaps the underlying vault, as they call it, basically the structure next to the building that's below the city sidewalk, does need to be repaired and redone. And this can be quite expensive. And as we alluded to, buildings are responsible for the sidewalk outside their property. Of course, if you don't repair it and somebody trips and falls, or you create an obvious hazard, you're going to get sued and there's going to be other potential headaches. So as a result, it's very common to be assessed for sidewalk and vault related repairs in New York City. Now, most of the things we've gone over are essential items to make sure that the building is a going concern and is safe to inhabit. But aside from that, you could potentially also be assessed for discretionary updates or upgrades to the building. So for example, if you want to redo the lobby, if you want to change the tile, replaster, do an extensive repainting inside the building, these types of things may fall outside the scope of your normal budget that your common charge or monthly maintenance goes towards. And as a result, you may very well be assessed for substantial discretionary type of upgrades. Another example would be, if your building decides to replace all the carpet in all the hallways on every floor, that's something which will typically have to be paid for via reserve fund or through an assessment. So we hope this was helpful. It's by no means an exhaustive list, but it should give you an idea as to some of the reasons why you may receive that letter from your management or from your board or from your accountant of the building informing you that you have some sort of obligation to pay an assessment. If you have any further questions, leave a comment below this video or send an email to team@hauseit.com. And of course, we'd love to help if you're looking to buy, sell, or rent in New York City. We can save you a great deal of money through our reduced commission services for buyers, sellers, and renters. We operate in New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley, as well as South Florida. Visit hauseit.com to learn more. I'm Nick at Hauseit, and we'll see you on the next video.